Earlier this year, I bought this second-hand wood-fired pizza oven. And making pizzas might just be one of my new favourite things to do. I want to build something to store it in to keep it out of the cold, wet weather. And as usual, I want to make use of all of the stuff that I have laying around already. And basically just spend as little money as possible. All this timber here, for example, was all salvaged from the old pergola that I ripped down at my mother-in-law's before I built her a nice new one. This is where I'm going to build it, and as you can see, I've got plenty of space here. So I think I'm going to make it 2.4 meters or 8 foot in length. I had a spare 8x2, so I've ripped it down the middle at the table saw to give me two 4x2s, which will span the length. Not all of the timber I have to use is pressure treated, so I'll get some wood preserver applied. The pizza oven is 500mm wide, so I decided to make the shed basically 2.4 meters by 600mm, which is 8x2 feet. And I'll have plans and a cut list available for this project. More on that later in the video. I have some of this spirit-based stain, which will add a bit more protection. And I can use up some scraps of OSB to clad the floor. To make the most of the OSB pieces I added an extra noggin for more support in between the boards. The hardest part of building any garden structure is usually levelling the base. You may have seen me struggle with that in previous project videos. But there's a brand new product that just hit the DIY market, which should make things easier. It's made in the UK, it's backed with 160 years of quality British engineering, and it's called the Swift Leveller. It's a simple and cost-effective solution to uneven ground, removing the need for ground screws, extensive digging and groundwork, or laying expensive bases like concrete slabs, saving you time and money. There are 4 models in the range, so whether you're building on soft or hard surfaces, Swift Leveller has you covered. There's the Mini for hard surfaces, such as concrete slabs, patios, for sheds, small greenhouses, workshops, etc. Then there's the Flexi, a good all-rounder for grass, gravel and other softer surfaces, best for sheds, greenhouses and smaller garden buildings. The XL, the Flexi's older brother, for when you need some extra support or a bigger adjustable height range. And this one must be concreted in for maximum support. It's best for larger garden structures. And finally, the Max, which holds an L bracket rather than a U channel, designed for the harder to reach spots or for bigger adjustable height range. All products are compatible with each other, meaning you can mix and match different models. And they're coated in an environmentally friendly, whisker-free finish, and each model comes with a 15-year guarantee. And you can find them available on Amazon, eBay and B&Q. For this project, I'm going to be using the Mini, so let's find out if they're as easy to fit as they should be. These should be spaced around 1 meter apart, so I'm going to need 6 in total. From left to right, it just needed a small adjustment. But from back to front, because the patio is sloped to allow rainwater to flow away from the house, it needed a bit more adjustment here to get it level. This is a great product and I'm sure I'll use them again in future. Now to frame my walls. I used some heavy-duty 150mm timber screws to secure the wall frames to the base. I'll use another 4x2 to act as a header beam, which will not only tie the end walls together structurally, but also it will support the roof and create a slope for rainwater to run off. And more 4x2s to frame out the front openings for the doors, which I'll add later. For the rafters, I have some 4x2s and I'm using a piece of timber to mark out the notches that I need to cut to create the angle needed. This worked out to be around 6 degrees, which will be fine for the type of roofing that I'll be using, as it requires a minimum 5-degree fall. That then gets used as a template to mark up the rest. The two end rafters needed to be cut slightly differently to allow them to sit on the end wall frames. I have some breathable membrane left over from earlier in the year when I built a garden room, and this is going to help keep my shed nice and dry on the inside while still allowing moisture to escape. Here I have some salvaged roof battens which were pulled off our roof a couple of years ago. Look how tight these growth rings are. This timber is so dense and high quality, and because it was also pressure treated many decades ago, that treatment is way more effective than modern treated timber. There wasn't a trace of rot on any of these battens. 3 of these will support the roof that I'll be adding later. I want to close up the space between those battens though to stop any creatures from crawling inside, and for that I'll use these offcuts of marine ply that I picked up from Marketplace. I'm going to get this primed and painted, partly to help seal it up and partly because it'll make things brighter inside the shed. And while waiting for that to dry, I can get more battens added to the walls. This is important because it creates an air gap between the membrane and cladding to help keep things dry. To create corner posts at the back, I just laminated 2 battens together. I want the corner posts at the front to look a little nicer, and I remembered I had some offcuts from our new pitched roof which was built by Robin, Clever and Ed a couple of years ago, so I got those ripped down to size. Now on to cladding. I went for feather edge as it's much cheaper than the alternatives like shiplap and much less problematic than tongue and groove, which in my opinion just doesn't give enough overlap to cope with the British weather. Cladding the back wall was difficult to film because it was a tight space, so I'll explain things better when I get to cladding the end walls. So each of these boards has a 90-degree corner, which on this one is here, and I like to place the face with that corner on at the back. I'll measure the space between my corner posts, which should be consistent all the way up, and I can get those lengths cut. Because I've already done my back wall and I want my cladding to wrap around and all line up nicely, I'm just going to mark up the position. So I know that that one needs to finish there, and I can slot this one under. I'm going to pre-drill these just because I don't want to split the ends of the boards. Now I can get this sitting level. I've made up this little jig. This part here hooks under the previous board and the next board will rest on the top here. So I've got T for top and B for bottom. And the distance between here and here is 100 millimeters. And that's because these boards are 125 millimeters and I want a 25 millimeter overlap. So I can just hook on my jig and get the feather edge board positioned. And because I know the board beneath finishes around here, which is 25 millimeters, I'm going to drill my hole about 7 or 8 millimeters above that. And that's just to make sure that I'm not nailing through both boards because they need to be able to expand and contract independently. I'm using the nails meant for my nail gun, just clipping them apart just so that they all match, and it saves me going to get any others. And every now and again I'll just check for level, and I can see I need to come a fraction higher on the right. So I'll just lift this up by a couple of millimeters. Once I got to the top, I mark up the 25mm overlaps onto the board beneath, and then I can measure the distance between those marks and where the roof will be, and then I transferred those measurements to the next piece of cladding, which gets trimmed to the perfect shape. Before I could clad the front, I need to frame out my openings, so it was time to cut the membrane back. And this piece of timber will be used for my door lining. It will later hold the hinges for the doors, and it'll give me something to butt the cladding up to. I needed a few extra pieces of batten before I can fit my top longer pieces of cladding, as I prepared to make lots of cuts with the jigsaw. I have another 4x2 which I'll use as a fascia. It will cover the end grain on the rafters and give more of a roof overhang at the front. I've got some of these Onduline roof sheets. Onduline, not sure how you pronounce it, but I really like these. They're cheap and they should last 25 years or so. It was about £30 for 2 of these sheets. And they can be cut with a handsaw, but I'm going to use the grinder. I've since learned that cutting these with a cutting disc in the grinder isn't the best idea, as the bitumen material is quite sticky, it can clog up the blade and could potentially be quite dangerous, so please don't do this. And now I'll get them fitted using some of these 80mm roofing screws, which have a rubber washer to stop any water getting in. These sheets can be bent around the edges too, and I cut curves at the front just to make them look a little nicer. Now to choose some timber to start making my doors, and I took these to the planer in my workshop just to get one straight face and edge on each board, as I'm going to be doing some joinery to make the doors, so any twist and warp in these boards would have made things problematic. I'll be cutting some halving joints here, so after setting the cutting depth on my miter saw to cut halfway through the thickness of these boards, I can make lots of cuts to remove material. Well, up until today I had been really lucky with the weather, but as you can see that's changed, and I want to get some doors on here to protect the OSB. So I want to create a little dry work area here under the pergola, which unfortunately has become a bit of a dumping ground. I got some screws in just to reinforce those joints, and then I can start wrapping these in membrane, which was a little bit silly because I realised later that I'd forgotten one crucial component. Can you guess what it is? I'm fitting these feather edge boards perpendicular to the cladding on the rest of the shed, mainly because it'll be much easier to fit the hinges. You might notice some issues that I was having here getting the nails in fully. So in my haste to get these doors fitted, I've just made 2 really stupid mistakes. Firstly, I just had 90mm nails fitted, meaning that every one has come through to the other side, hitting into my paving slabs, which surprisingly seem to remain unscathed. The second one, however, is even more stupid. I didn't add the braces to the door frames, which was meant to be done before I fitted the membrane. The solution: cut away the membrane, make some braces which will run diagonally from the hinge side upwards. Make sure they are a nice tight fit so that they prevent the doors from sagging over time, and secure with screws. I can then add some membrane again over the top. With the second door, I get the brace added before the feather edge this time. And now I can trim away the excess at the top of each door to get a nice straight top edge. In this drawer, I have some old hinges that I salvaged from some old gates, which I made some replacement gates for. And to be honest, these aren't the sort of style that I would choose to buy, but they are way better quality than the cheap hinges that I would be likely to buy. Oh, looks like I've got a bolt as well. That'll come in handy. These aren't in perfect condition. You can see the paint is flaking away in a couple of areas, but I'm not going to go to the effort of cleaning these up and repainting them, not today anyway. These are going to be secured to the horizontal part of the frame, and ideally you want your hinges to be 2/3 the width of your door. So in this case, this works out pretty well. With this propped up where I want it, now I can mark up where I want to cut off the bottom. I'm fitting this door tight to this edge, which I wouldn't normally do, but because this wood is so wet, not from rain, but from being pressure treated, basically this wood is never going to get any bigger than it is at the moment. I can then repeat the process for cutting the excess of the second door. Right, this is going to take some more adjustments to get the doors closing together, but for now it's going to keep things dry, and I'm soaked, my tools are soaked, my camera is soaked, so I'll finish this off another day. Ah yes, that's a bit nicer. Should be able to get this finished today. Right, so I need to get these two doors closing nicely, and it looks like I just need to take about 1/2 inch off this door, and then the overhang on the cladding on this door should just seat over it nicely. And because that's basically going to leave me with a full board here, it should look quite nice. And don't ask me how I did that, just pure luck. That worked out great. Now I'm going to get that old bolt installed to the inside of the door on the right. And I drilled a 16mm hole to receive the bolt. I'm going to use more of the salvaged batons as cleats to hold a shelf. There was one final thing I wanted to add to the shed, a weather bar to sit above the doors just to make sure that rain doesn't get in through the top. Fitting this coving bit in the router table allows me to cut a nice drip edge so that rain doesn't track back towards the doors. I bought this Harspen staple so that I can secure the doors shut with a padlock. I have full plans and cut lists available for this project, optimised for use with timber that can be bought off the shelf easily, meaning it will be much easier for you to build because you won't be using all of my ragtag random bits of grubby old timber. You'll find links to those in the description box below. I removed the pizza stones from the oven, which I'll keep indoors over the winter, and there's space for firewood, our outdoor sofa cushions, and some of Toddler Brown's garden toys. In total, I spent under £150 on this project, as most of the materials were either salvaged or left over from past projects. Thank you for watching.